They mocked the janitor, poured water over his head, and told him to stay in his place, completely unaware that he was the retired father of the CEO who built the company from nothing. Something's off, Rochelle. You built this company on respect. That's not what I'm seeing anymore. The words came from Luis Mercado, a contractor who'd been with Bennett Systems Group since the beginning, before the glass offices, before the IP girl, before the magazine covers with Rochelle Bennett's face printed next to headlines like Tech's New Powerhouse. Now he stood in her office in downtown Phoenix, arms crossed, eyes heavy. Rochelle leaned back in her chair, expression calm but not dismissive. She respected Luis. Always had. Off how? She asked. He hesitated. You've got managers talking down to folks. I watched one dude laugh as a janitor cleaned up his spilled smoothie, like it was a show. Another VP, well, he called a cleaner a walking waste of payroll. Loud. Didn't care who heard. Rochelle narrowed her eyes. Do you have names? Luis nodded, but looked uneasy. Yeah. But look, you know how this goes. They talk different when you're not around. You walk into a room and suddenly everybody's all, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But that's not the truth. The truth's what they do when they think no one important's watching. She didn't say anything for a few seconds, just stared out the window. She'd built this company from nothing. From an idea scribbled on a napkin at a diner in Tempe to an enterprise with over 800 employees and clients on 3 continents. She hired people who shared her values, respect, equity, and grit. She knew culture came from the top, but it only stayed strong if the middle held it. And right now, it sounded like the middle was cracking. Luis left her with a few names and a thank you. He didn't press further. He didn't have to. That night, she called her father. You busy, old man? Just losing at dominoes with your uncle. You okay? She paused. You remember what you used to tell me about people's real faces? You don't learn someone's character when they're smiling at you. You learn it when they think they can get away with being cruel. Rochelle exhaled through her nose. I think some folks at the company are getting comfortable with cruelty. He didn't ask what she meant. He listened, then said, I'll take a look. She sat up. Dad, I wasn't... You didn't ask. I'm offering. Let me walk those halls again, just not in a suit this time. Rochelle hesitated. Her father, Harold Bennett, had retired 5 years ago. Before that, he was known as the man who fixed everything, literally and figuratively. Former Marine, ex-electrician, mentor to dozens, and the man who worked 2 jobs to get his daughter through MIT. He'd earned his rest. I'll just be some night shift cleaner, he added. You can get me in under a different name. Nobody'll look twice. Trust me, baby girl, they never do, she smiled. You're serious? As a heart attack? You want the truth? I'll find it. By Friday, he had a badge. The name read Henry Carter. No one knew. Not HR, not Rochelle's assistants, not even building security. Only one person in maintenance, an old friend of Harold's, helped push the paperwork through. That Sunday night, as Harold stood outside the back employee entrance, wearing steel-toed boots and a faded green janitorial uniform, he looked up at the glass tower that bore his daughter's name on every major floor. He wasn't doing this for drama, or revenge, or to prove a point. He was doing it because something felt off. And when something feels off, you don't just stand there. You move. He rolled the cleaning cart through the door. They didn't recognize him. No one looked up. But inside, he knew, if the stories Luis told were true, this wasn't going to be easy. The badge said, Henry Carter. The shirt was navy blue and stiff at the collar. The pants sagged just enough to remind him this wasn't made to measure, and the shoes, God, the shoes, had no business being called comfortable. But Harold Bennett looked in the mirror and nodded once. Time to get to work. The Bennett Systems Group building in Irving, Texas, looked different at 10:48 p.m. Gone were the buzz of voices and ringing phones. The lobby, once loud with conversation and the rhythm of meetings, now echoed with the squeak of polished floors and the wheels of a janitor's cart. Harold, Henry, was met by a man named Ellis Duarte, the custodial supervisor. Late 30s, clipboard in hand, Bluetooth earpiece stuck in his left ear like it hadn't moved in a week. "You the new temp?" Ellis asked without even glancing up. "Yes, sir," Harold replied. "Name's Henry." Ellis grunted, scribbled something, and handed him a map of the floors with areas highlighted in yellow. "You got the west wing of floors 3 and 4. Bathrooms, break room, hallway trash, and conference glass. Start on 4 and work your way down. That cart's yours. Don't go into the east wing. Someone else has that." "Got it," Harold said. "And don't expect anyone to talk to you. Just keep your head down and your cart moving. They don't like stragglers." The man walked off, voice already raised again through his earpiece. So that was the welcome. Harold pushed his cart toward the elevator. The building was cool, humming with machines left running. On the ride to the 4th floor, he caught his reflection in the metal doors. He looked tired, older, smaller than he remembered being. As soon as he stepped out, it started. 2 men in tight button-downs and pressed pants exited a glass office. One had a protein shaker in hand. The other scrolled his phone. The second one glanced at Harold, then whispered loud enough to carry, "Man, they just keep getting older," his friend chuckled. "Wonder if he even hears us." Harold kept pushing the cart. He started on the conference room glass. As he wiped down the wide windows and smudged corners, he noticed discarded cups on nearly every surface. Empty soda cans tucked behind a plant. Fingerprints on the touchscreens no one had wiped off. By midnight, he'd finished the break room and moved into the main hallway. That's when a woman in heels came striding down, talking loudly into her phone. Yeah, he wants it by Friday, but we all know that's bull. I mean, this place is full of grunts, right? You just throw a deadline at them, and someone'll scramble." She looked up. Her eyes passed right through him. Then she spotted a small paper towel scrap on the floor and pointed with her toe. "Can you take care of that?" she asked, as if the words tasted strange in her mouth. Harold nodded silently and picked it up. She was gone before he stood up straight. Around 1:30 a.m. he was mopping near the west stairwell when someone kicked a door open behind him. A young man, early 20s, tight haircut, badge swinging, carried a box of binders and dumped them on a desk nearby. "Still here?" the man asked, looking Harold up and down. "Just about done," Harold said. "You move real slow," the guy replied, half laughing. "Better not get fired on your first night." Harold smiled politely, said nothing, and kept swabbing the tile. But inside, he felt it. A slow-burning mix of confusion and disappointment. These were the people Rochelle trusted to represent her name. These were the folks wearing badges under a logo that used to mean something. He'd expected the job to be quiet, maybe dull. He hadn't expected to feel invisible. But the worst part wasn't the insults. It was how casual they were. How easy it came to some of them. Like they'd done it before. But what Harold didn't know yet was that this was just the surface. And what waited below was far worse. By the 3rd night, Harold had learned the rhythm. Show up, grab your cart, keep your head down. Most people didn't even glance at him. A few muttered instructions. 1 or 2 acted like he didn't exist. That part didn't surprise him anymore. What did surprise him was how quickly he'd adjusted, how fast he'd started walking a little slower, avoiding eye contact, answering only when spoken to. But on Wednesday, something shifted. It started just after 11 p.m. on the 3rd floor near the elevators. Harold had just emptied a trash bin when he heard voices. Sharp, fast, one of them cracking like a whip. "Did I say mop there? Huh? Did I?" Harold froze. It was coming from around the corner, near the loading area. He pushed his cart slowly, letting the wheels make enough noise to announce him without intruding. When he turned the corner, he saw a young woman, maybe mid-20s, slim build, hair pulled into a tight bun, standing rigid against the wall. Her eyes were locked on the floor. Across from her stood a man in a maroon blazer, tie loosened, pointing a finger like it was a weapon. "What's your name again?" he barked. Sophia Rojas," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Sophia. Right. Do you know what happens when my clients slip on floors that aren't dried properly? You think you take the heat? I did put the sign up. Oh, did you? He looked around exaggeratedly. Because I don't see it. What I do see is someone who clearly doesn't care enough to follow basic instructions. Harold's jaw clenched. He stepped closer, slow and quiet, like approaching a wild animal. The man didn't notice. Sophia still wouldn't look up. Sir, Harold said calmly. The man turned, surprised. What? I saw her put the sign up earlier, right by the corner. There was a pause. The man's eyes narrowed. And you are? Night shift janitor. Henry. Well, Henry, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Next time, let me do my job and you do yours, and tell your friend here to stop playing the victim. Sophia flinched. Harold didn't say anything, not because he didn't want to, but because Sophia gave him the smallest shake of her head. The man turned and walked away without another word, his shoes clicking against the tile. Sophia exhaled, quick and shaky. She turned to grab her mop, but her hands were trembling. Harold reached into his cart and pulled out a paper towel, handed it to her. You all right? She nodded. I'm fine. It's always like that. That guy got a name? Brett Coulson. I think he's in contracts. Harold filed it away. You shouldn't have said anything, Sophia added quietly. Why not? He's petty. He'll make your life hard if he remembers your face. Harold looked at her. Steady. Let him. Sophia offered a small smile, but her eyes still carried the weight of it. That night, Harold didn't go straight home. He drove a few blocks to a quiet parking lot behind a diner and sat in the truck with his phone in hand. He opened the voice recorder app and started speaking. Wednesday, 11:47 p.m., Sophia Rojas verbally harassed by Brett Coulson. Witnessed by me. Tone aggressive. Accusations unfounded. No sign of hazard. I intervened. He escalated. Sophia was visibly shaken. He saved the file. Then he stared at the screen for a while. Maybe this had started as observation. Curiosity. But now it was personal. The look on Sophia's face, that wasn't just about a wet floor sign. That was someone trying to survive the kind of work that wears down your soul a little more each day. And she wasn't alone. Harold had seen the fatigue on others too. The quick glances, the long silences, the smiles that never reached the eyes. But after that night, Harold wasn't just gathering stories anymore. He was preparing for something bigger. By the fifth night, Harold didn't need a map anymore. He knew the corners people forgot to clean. He knew where the leftover pizza boxes were usually stashed, and which conference rooms smelled like overpriced cologne by midnight. But now he was walking those halls with a different purpose. He had started recording. He wasn't tech-savvy, not like Rochelle, but he knew how to press a button, a small mic tucked into the lining of his uniform, voice recorder app running in his pocket. Simple. Discreet. Effective. He didn't speak unless he had to. And when he did, he made sure his voice stayed calm and clear. On Thursday night, things escalated. He was wiping down the break room sink when he heard footsteps behind him. Fast, loud. Then came the sound of liquid splashing onto tile. Oops! Harold turned. A tall man in a branded jacket stood holding a coffee cup tipped sideways. Brown liquid ran across the floor, right where Harold had just finished mopping. Guess you'll have to earn that paycheck, huh? The man smirked. Harold met his eyes. You could have used the sink. The smirk faded. Excuse me? I said the sink's 2 feet away. The man stepped closer. You got something smart to say, old man? Harold didn't move. Just facts. Keep talking like that and you won't last here. Harold picked up his mop. I'm not here to last. The man scoffed, muttered something under his breath and walked off. Harold stood there for a moment, then leaned over, pressed the small switch on his recorder. Got it. Later that same night, in the stairwell near the 5th floor copy room, he caught a conversation between 2 junior staffers. One of them, young, wiry, looked barely old enough to rent a car, was laughing about getting a custodian written up. She left her cart like 3 feet out of place, bro. I told Liza it was a tripping hazard. Boom. Warning. That's what she gets for pretending not to speak English. The other guy laughed along, adding, Dude, you're savage. HR's a joke around here. Just say safety and they rubber stamp everything. Harold leaned back against the wall, gripping the cart handle a little tighter. He recorded that too. By now, the drive on his phone was filling up. Voice files, photos, timestamps. He had names, times, details, and it wasn't just about the behavior anymore. It was the pattern. A culture of casual cruelty that trickled down from people who liked to feel bigger than they were. He watched Sophia move with her shoulders hunched, saw the older maintenance man, Luis, quiet, polite, get ordered to re-clean an already spotless lobby just because someone claimed it smelled weird. He even saw a woman on the front desk quietly slide her lunch into a trash bag when a senior associate glared at her for eating too close to the main entrance. Harold kept quiet. But inside, something was shifting. This company had his daughter's name on it. She'd spent years building it with honesty, purpose, and pride. And these people, the ones laughing, mocking, power-tripping their way through the night shift, were stomping on everything she'd worked for. So the next morning, as the sky turned pink and the building emptied out, Harold parked across the street and waited. Rochelle arrived just before 7, coffee in hand, her heels clicking against the concrete. She spotted him instantly. He wasn't in uniform anymore, just jeans, flannel, and that tired look she hadn't seen in a long time. She walked over quickly. "Dad?" "I got what you need," he said, voice low. "Audio, names, faces. They're real, and it's worse than you think." Her shoulders stiffened. "How bad?" He handed her the phone. "You should hear it for yourself." She looked at the device in her hand, then at him. Her face was unreadable, but her grip tightened slightly. "All right," she said. "Let's fix it." But neither of them expected how explosive the fallout would be once the truth came to light. The boardroom on the 15th floor was rarely this full before 9 a.m. Rochelle had called the emergency meeting with only 2 hours' notice. No agenda, no context. Just a short message from her assistant. Non-optional. CEO attendance required. By 8:07 a.m., the room was lined with directors, senior staff, and department heads. Some were annoyed. Others looked nervous. The ones who had something to fear? They kept checking their watches. Then Rochelle walked in, with Harold right behind her. He wasn't in a suit. He didn't need one. A few faces twitched. A couple eyes widened, the kind of look people get when a memory crashes into them too fast. Brett Coulson, standing near the back wall with a coffee in hand, almost dropped it. Rochelle didn't say a word at first. She walked to the head of the table, opened her laptop, and connected her phone. Then she looked around the room. "When I built this company, I built it on values my father taught me. Respect, hard work, dignity. I believed we could build a culture where no one felt small just because of the title on their badge." A quiet shift in the room. No one moved. "But over the past week, we've uncovered something else. A culture that some of you allowed to grow under my name. One where people abuse power because they think no one's watching." She nodded toward Harold. He stepped forward, placed a small speaker on the table, and pressed play. The audio cut through the room like glass. "You got something smart to say, old man." Laughter. A thud. Then Harold's steady voice. "Just facts." Next, a recording of Brett barking at Sophia. "You think you take the heat if someone slips, do you? You're lucky you still have a job." Another. The 2 junior employees laughing about lying to HR. "Just say safety and they rubber stamp everything." The room grew still. Faces turned pale. A few people looked around, like someone might stop the tape. No one did. Then Rochelle looked at Brett. "You called Sofia Rojas a liability for following protocol. You poured coffee on a freshly cleaned floor and made a joke about her being lucky to still work here." Brett opened his mouth. No words came out. Rochelle turned to the man in the branded jacket. "James Pierce, VP of Sales. You tried to intimidate someone you thought was beneath you. And you weren't the only one." Her eyes scanned the room. "This wasn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. And it's over." Silent. No one reached for their coffee. No one shuffled their papers. Rochelle folded her hands. Effective immediately, the following employees are terminated: Brett Colson, James Pierce, Brandon Reeves, Lisa Park. Formal letters will be issued today. It has already been notified. Liza, sitting halfway down the table, looked up in disbelief. You're joking. No, Rochelle said flatly. I'm not. Security had already been notified. 2 uniformed staff stepped inside quietly and stood near the door. You can gather your belongings and leave peacefully, Rochelle continued. We won't stop you from moving on, but you will not work under this roof another hour. Brett stood, face flushed. You let some janitor decide. He's not just some janitor, Rochelle snapped. He's my father, and more importantly, he saw something I never would have found from this office. You showed your real selves when you thought no one was watching. That shut him up. As the 4 employees were quietly escorted out, Rochelle turned back to the others. We all carry this brand. It's not just a logo. It's a promise. And it means something, or it should. If you forgot that, this is your reminder. She paused. Let it hang in the air. Anyone who stays in this room today is expected to rebuild that culture. I don't need perfection. I need integrity. But even after the firings, the real change was still to come, and it would take more than words to heal what had been broken. The day after the firings, something subtle shifted in the air. It wasn't immediate. There were no parades or celebrations, but you could feel it. Like the tension that used to hang heavy in the hallways had thinned. The front desk staff spoke a little louder. The cleaning crew walked a little straighter. For the first time in a long time, people weren't just surviving their shifts. They were watching to see what would happen next. Rochelle didn't hide. She made rounds on every floor that week, not in heels and blazers, but in jeans and sneakers, shaking hands with night crew workers, listening more than she spoke. She sat with the mailroom staff during their lunch break. She asked the security team what they needed. It wasn't about the cameras or the headlines. It was about earning back the kind of trust that can't be bought or faked. And Harold? He didn't say much, but he showed up one more time, unannounced. It was Friday evening when he returned to the building, this time carrying a paper bag of tamales he'd picked up from a family-run shop near Oak Cliff. He made his way to the basement custodial lounge and found Sophia stacking paper towels in a supply cabinet. She turned and blinked. Mr. Bennett? Harold held up the bag. Thought I owed you dinner. Her smile broke slowly, hesitant at first, then real. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said. But I wanted to. They sat at the metal table in the back of the room, sharing food in the soft buzz of vending machines. Sophia talked more this time, about how she sent money back home every month to support her younger siblings, how she'd almost quit the job 2 weeks ago but couldn't afford to. She told him she'd never stood up for herself before. Not really. But after that boardroom meeting, something changed. I didn't think anyone would ever see what we go through, she said. But now, it feels like maybe they do. Harold nodded slowly. Sometimes the right eyes just need to look in the right places. Upstairs, Rochelle stood in front of the entire company for a staff-wide meeting. Her voice wasn't booming, but it carried weight. We fired 4 people this week, she said. But this isn't about punishment. It's about accountability, and about what kind of place we want to walk into every day. She looked around the room, letting it sink in. From now on, janitors, receptionists, delivery drivers, everyone is part of this team. And anyone who forgets that, anyone who thinks respect is optional, doesn't belong here. No applause, just steady silence. The kind that says people are really listening. She finished with one simple line. Nobody in this company is invisible. By the following Monday, changes had already begun. A new anonymous reporting system was launched. Department heads were required to do monthly walkthroughs with every division, including custodial. Performance reviews would now include peer feedback from all levels, not just management. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't fix everything overnight. But it was a start. One evening a few weeks later, Harold and Rochelle sat on her patio, looking out at the Texas sunset. You could have just let me retire in peace, you know, Harold joked. Sipping his sweet tea, Rochelle chuckled. You could have just let me handle it the easy way. He glanced at her. Wouldn't have worked. She nodded. No, I guess it wouldn't have. They sat in silence for a while. Then she said, Thanks for doing it, Dad. He gave her a long look. You built this place with your name. I just made sure it still meant something. Rochelle leaned back in her chair. It does, and maybe that's the real lesson. Not every act of courage comes with applause. Sometimes it looks like a man in his 60s pushing a mop through a dark hallway. Sometimes it's standing up for someone when no one else will. But it always matters. So wherever you work, whatever title you wear, remember this. The way you treat people when you think no one's watching says everything about who you are. Respect isn't earned by position. It's proven through character. If this story made you feel something, share it. Talk about it. Ask yourself if your workplace reflects who you are. And if it doesn't, maybe it's time to change that. Make sure to subscribe for more real human stories that matter.